Can y'all hear me? I love bulldogs though. They're so cute. Can y'all hear me? No, it's not a copyright strike, y'all. Completely different. But I don't know if y'all can hear me. So I want to make sure y'all can hear me before I move on. What's good, Kick Rocks? Hold on. So I found when I went out of this, right? And I went to my email. Hi guys. Sorry. I went to my email and it's almost embarrassing. Not regarding that was me streaming copyright protected content and not providing commentary. However, it's not a strike. They just mute it, right? However, do y'all need me to tell you how to file a privacy complaint appropriately? Because let me explain to you what is protected by a privacy complaint. All right. It's not going to be your name if your name is found anywhere publicly. Okay. It is your phone number, your address, a debit card number, banking information, stuff like that. All right. You're never going to get somebody with a privacy strike. All right. If these things are not shown. So I hope that you enjoy wasting your time because you're not affecting me. All right. You're not affecting me. And YouTube is like, are they okay? Because generally, if you don't know, you have to, when you file a privacy complaint, you have to put timestamps in that your personal, not public information is there. Okay. Which I do not do. All right. I don't post addresses. I don't post PPI, right? So if you're attempting to hit me for a privacy strike and the video is a minute long and you put a timestamp of 3 minutes, that's a sure way for it not to go through, just an FYI. It has to be private information, not public information that is easily found on a Google site. That is never going to be a privacy strike. Okay. So to the poor soul that wasted all of their time with those reports, you didn't get them. That's fucking embarrassing. You can't even report appropriately. God, it's embarrassing. Any whoosies. Right. It's crazy. Y'all are fucking pathetic. Absolutely fucking pathetic. And I'm just gonna leave it there. I was gonna make the fact that you didn't get the privacy strike my avatar, but I decided against it. I did. But anyway, back to what I was saying. I got a little distracted when I was laughing when checking my email that it never goes through because I don't post private information. Okay, it doesn't go through. But I did come across. It's not Gabby. That's the pathetic part. It's people that say that they have a higher IQ than Gabby, but clearly don't know the guidelines. All right, so at least try to go through the guidelines if you're gonna attempt to report me. But just like you fail at everything else, you failed at that too. Okay. So while I was dealing with that, all right, I found another case. Okay. And we're going to do that instead. So I don't know if anybody knows who Meggan Sundwall is. Have y'all heard about this? Because I didn't hear about this until just now. She's not. It's okay. I know. I think it's hilarious. I would be so embarrassed if I failed constantly. Okay, so let me see if I could pull this up here. Hold on. It will never be me. You're absolutely right. Hold on. I'm going to pull it up so that you could see. Hold on, because I know her name is spelled differently. Hold on. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to do this and then I'm going to go because they're streaming this on YouTube. And I found it like when I opened up YouTube, I found it. And this seems pretty interesting. So I'm going to go over here. Yes, she's on trial. You heard about it? I didn't hear about it until I just opened YouTube. Okay. So this is Meggan Sundwall. I mean, I don't think that they learned from much of anything, Eldon, and I'm just being honest. Wild. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Anywhoosies, okay. That is right, Skittles. That is the case that is being streamed right now. So we're gonna go and watch that because that seems pretty fucking interesting if you ask me. Hold on, let me switch this. I'm sorry. I don't. No. It's an automatic thing. It's because I wasn't providing commentary, because I was just shocked at the situation. But that's why.
500 pages.
Benny
is real.
I was so nervous because I've never had like a.
I'm back, caught up on what's happening.
I don't want this.
Would you have done that same kind of protocol in Kaycee's case?
Yes.
Can y'all hear it?
Do you recall how Kaycee presented when she arrived?
When she came to
Can I
the
post it from
emergency
here?
room, I know that she was.
So I didn't. It was just on my YouTube home. I like this is crazy. Yes, Meggan Sundwall. Yes, right, Eldon. But I just literally we're seeing it together. Oh, Eldon, you got a new profile picture. So
Unresponsive. I know she was not
Hold on.
communicating. She was not. She was breathing on her own, but it was very shallow, not sufficient breathing. And so I know that the ER had to give her some medication and intubate her to support her breathing. But she was not responding. She did have some pupillary response,
reaction.
but she was not withdrawing to pain. So one of the tests, if someone, we literally pinch your nail really, really hard or rub your chest really, really hard, and that hurts. And so people will, even if they're not awake, alert, and oriented, they will, most of the time they will pull away, and she was not doing that.
And to be clear, were you actually present during this initial presentation, or is this just something that you learned later on that?
I do want to say this. I don't. I believe that assisted suicide should be a thing. I don't think that it really. I think that people should be able to die with dignity. And in a lot of situations, they lose that. Oh, I'm sure, Mahala. I don't think that. I think everybody deserves dignity as they're dying, and I believe that it should be a thing everywhere. Although I'm gonna say I understand that it's not, and we have to follow the laws. I get that. Right. I know, and I think Washington State has it. There are places that have it, and I really do believe that it should be a more widespread thing. That's just my opinion, all right? And because I do think that when people like when they're sick, I don't know about this, you understand? I'm reading it now, but if they are if they're going to lose their quality of life and really lose every ounce of dignity they have, then I believe that they should be able, I'm going to read it to you in a second, Mahalo, that they should be able to make that decision, right? We can make every other decision in adult lives, normal adult lives. So why would we not be able to choose that? I don't necessarily agree with that. That's just my opinion, all right? So Meggan, she's charged with aggravated murder and accused of killing her friends with an insulin overdose. Right. I don't. I'll tell you that. I don't want to do that. So this is Provo, and it says jurors will be tasked with deciding whether Meggan Sundwall encouraged her friend to commit suicide or actually killed the friend with a fatal insulin overdose in a trial that began on Wednesday. Right. Deputy Utah County Attorney July Thomas said Sundwall, a nurse living in Santa Quinn, had a plan to go to her friend's house and inject her with insulin until the friend died. She said text between the two outlines the plan. I lost it. Hold on. Sundwall was incentivized because the friend repeatedly told her she was the beneficiary of the life insurance policy. Thomas said in opening statements that Kaycee Lynn Terry, 38, of Highland, told lies that grew. She said her family believed that she had cancer right up until she was hospitalized in a diabetic coma shortly before she was taken off life support and died. Terry ordered saline to the home and had a port where she would administer it, claiming it was a chemotherapy drug. Terry sent Sundwall texts saying, "Tell me I'm not dying," and portrayed that she was in pain from cancer and wanted to be free from pain. Thomas said that was a frequent topic of conversation for the two women. I believe you will find that Kaycee neither wanted to or intended to die. Holy shit. How is that possible? Is that where you are, JC? Even though she pretended, she did want to, in an increasingly desperate attempt to keep Meggan's attention and affection. The evidence tends to establish that Kaycee thought she could handle Meggan, but she didn't count on Meggan's determination. Sundwall told her friend things like, "There's nothing left for you here, and you have to let it go. It is past time." Terry would, in turn, pretend to be doctors and nurses, texting Sundwall to say she was nearing death and in hospice. This is crazy. According to Thomas, Terry pretended to be suicidal and interested in ending the pain, but it was pain that did not exist. She said Sundwall spoke about ways she could end her life. I'm sorry, y'all, my computer's doing something. And provided insulin to her while they were roommates and asked if she planned to use it. Thomas said Sundwall offered to help. Terry told her sister that she thought Sundwall was trying to kill her. Oh, shit. And the family helped her move out of Sundwall's home and into Terry's apartment's home. She said Terry's lies continued to grow and became so outlandish that it appeared to be a cry for help. Thomas said Terry claimed she had used 4 and 9 bottles of insulin, hundreds of times over what Sundwall said would kill her, and Sundwall did not call her out. Facts, mongoose. This is nuts. Ultimately, Terry agreed that Sundwall could help her end her life on August 11, 2024, but Terry postponed until the next day. She said family members saw Sundwall arrive at the home on August 12, 2024, and when they returned to check on Terry after multiple missed calls, she was laying on her bed, struggling to breathe, unconscious or in a coma, with Meggan sitting there watching, Thomas said. She said no one called 911, not Sundwall or her parents, who arrived after hearing Terry was dying. Thomas said a glucose monitor showed checks of Terry's blood sugar 19 times over 10 hours. The numbers would go from normal to a level where she would have been unconscious, and then she tested 10 more times. For at least 7 solid hours, Meggan was there watching Kaycee descend from confusion to unconscious to a coma. She said Sundwall was in financial distress after losing her job and her car. She said that she sent a message Sundwall sent, that doesn't make any sense, that said, if you dying would get me out of this mess and darkness I'm in, I would take it. Holy fucking shit, y'all. Thomas also said that 283 messages were deleted from Sundwall's phone. Nothing is ever really deleted. How do y'all stupid fucks not know this? Meggan wanted Kaycee to die to relieve her from the stress of her financial situation, and that plan worked. Scott Williams, Sundwall's attorney, said the largest question is whether Terry needed Sundwall and could not have killed herself. He said the evidence does not prove there was more insulin administered after she would have been in a coma. He said Terry had admitted for years that she was suicidal, but that it kept escalating. She said she claimed to be using opioids and was stealing from her grandparents. Jesus Christ. She certainly ramped up her supposed misery level, he said, adding that the psychologist will testify about the dynamic between the two friends and why Sundwall would accept anything her friend was saying and show up unconditionally. You're going to see that Kaycee was begging her to help her. He said the police had confirmation bias and missed DNA tests on key items. Sundwall is charged with aggravated murder, a first-degree felony, obstruction of justice, a second-degree felony. That is fucking crazy. But I would assume that there is that there's proof of it, right? I guess we'll find out.
Affected your treatment and care of her?
When she very first came on, I was not like down in the ER. The
Let
ER
me
was
see if
managing
there's
the initial things.
Stop one.
But then shortly after, especially if we know it's going to be a patient that's going to be sick, that's going to be admitted to the ICU, I generally go down and see the patient.
Here we go. Hold on a sec. Oh my God, this is 8 hours, y'all. Try that.
I will now explain how the trial will unfold. The prosecution will give its opening statement. An opening statement gives an overview of the case from one point of view and summarizes what the lawyer thinks the evidence will show. Defense counsel may choose to make an opening statement right after the prosecutor, or wait until after all the prosecution's evidence has been presented, or not make one at all. You will then hear the prosecution's evidence. Evidence is usually presented by calling and questioning witnesses. What they say is called testimony. A witness is questioned first by the lawyer who called that witness, and then
I went back.
by the opposing lawyer. Consider all testimony.
So I went back to the first one. No, I didn't get hit. It's an automatic thing. I should check my email. Hold on.
Whether from direct or cross-examination, regardless of who calls the witness. After the prosecution has presented all its evidence, the defendant may present evidence, though the defendant has no duty to do
Yes,
so.
this is
If
crazy.
the defendant does present evidence, the
Facts,
prosecution may then
Paul.
present additional evidence.
I'm going to fast forward this because I think that we all,
around September 1st of 2020,
I can't pause
that
I think that we all have a basic idea how trial works, right? So he's just laying out the rules in his courtroom.
she had checked with a pharmacist friend of hers, and that she would need about 100 units to end her life. 100 units of insulin is a little teeny amount. It's actually only a milliliter. There's 10 milliliters per bottle. So those last diabetics a good amount of time. And Kaycee's family had a number of diabetics in it.
So Kaycee is the victim. Wild, Kennel. Kaycee is the victim. And I'm trying to see if I could find other things while this is playing. Oh, that's not what I'm looking for. Hold on, y'all.
Insulin available at Kaycee's home, where she lived after she moved out of Megan's home, because her uncle lived there as well. He is diabetic. You'll hear from him. Her grandparents live there. Her grandmother is diabetic. And uncle.
So it says that the DNA was excluded from syringes. Why would they do that? Meggan Sundwall's defense argues that her DNA was excluded from the syringes collected in evidence, reiterating that Sundwall was merely a genuine friend who was manipulated by Terry. But why would you want the DNA excluded? The fact that she's the beneficiary makes it look a little crazy, you know? It's pouring out there, y'all. It is like black outside. In my opinion, right? It makes it look bad. You understand? Because I would imagine that there has to be some kind of what's the word, y'all? I would imagine that they have some kind of proof, right? Because they're fucking charging her, right? It has to be that they have some kind. I'm sorry, I'm trying to fix my computer doing something. It is easy. You're right. And I would imagine that a nurse would understand that, right? Because the body processes it automatically. But why would they not want the DNA? And she wasn't diabetic. It's so weird. It's so weird. This is going to be, I'm going to be stuck on this one. they have, hold on a second. Investigators say that 4 years of text messages show Sundwall detailing different ways that Terry could kill herself and offering ways that Sundwall could assist her. I know. But, okay, Sundwall had fallen into difficult financial circumstances and believed that she was the beneficiary of a rumored $1.5 million insurance policy. That's what I'm trying to see. I clicked on that so that, no, your body processes it. So it's going to be difficult to, that's what I'm looking for, Scroll Patrol. Thank you. I'm looking for the texts because the text, she's saying that she was doing her friend a favor. Guessing is what I'm gathering. But if you're encouraging her to kill herself while you're the beneficiary of the life insurance policy, right? That's a little strange, that's a little strange. But I just found this case. So I would imagine it's not that it'll out you. It's going to be difficult to detect, especially in a person who doesn't have diabetes. So their insulin process is normal. Sure, I'm sure that they could try to figure it out, but it's not going to be as easy as they think, as like we think. So she says that she kills herself. That's what she says. But if she's the one, look at Michelle Carter. If she's the one that gave her the idea to use the insulin, that's not going to be good. While investigators initially claimed that Sundwall convinced her friend she was sick, in opening statements, prosecutors said that the opposite, that Terry had feigned illness to Sundwall and her family in hopes of gaining attention and sympathy. It doesn't say anything about the DNA, though. That's what I was looking for. Oh, I'm sure. Listen, it really makes me sad, y'all. It makes me so sad the way people, like what people do for money. And I see it all the time. Oh, yeah. High doses of insulin will definitely unalive you. I see it happen when like there's a death in the family or something, people fucking change and it's sad.
People had recently died earlier that year, and he was diabetic too. So there was a lot of insulin, a lot of syringes accessible in that home. So Meggan and Kaycee.
How did she get the insulin? That's what I want to know. Where did it come from? You can't just buy insulin over the counter unless they're in Utah. Are they close to Mexico, JC?
Discussed the idea of Kaycee's dying by insulin overdose. Meggan told Kaycee that it would be easy. She would just fall asleep. And it wouldn't even necessarily be detectable at autopsy because it's a naturally occurring substance. Within a day or two of that discussion, Meggan brought home insulin and stored it in the refrigerator and then texted Kaycee.
Oh, the nurse supplied the insulin as well? Where'd she get it from? She steal it from her job? She didn't have a job. She said she got terminated. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I guess, but God.
A number of times over the next week or so, hey, that insulin's there if you want it. Don't forget the insulin. Are you going to use the insulin tonight? That insulin's still there. Aren't you going to use it? Kaycee, around that point, had communicated with Kaylee that she thought Meggan was trying to kill her. And so Kaylee and her husband, they waited until Meggan and her family.
So the victim told her friends or the family, the people around her, that she thought that Meggan, the nurse, was trying to kill her. Okay?
Left town, and they kind of swooped in and moved Kaycee out of that house. At that point, both Kaylee, the sister, and another friend of Kaycee's saw the insulin in the fridge. Quite honestly, I don't know if Kaycee really believed at that point that Meggan was trying to kill her. But I do believe that this is another story that Kaycee used it was drama. It was something to elicit concern from the other people in her life, from Kaylee and her friends. Anyway, she moved out of that house. She moved into a basement apartment at her grandparents' home in Highland. And as I mentioned, also living there was another uncle initially, who died in January of 2024, lived there as well. During that time frame, that did not end the discussions about insulin and insulin overdose. Meggan asked Kaycee in 2021 if Kaycee was nervous to do it by yourself. And then she asked her, you want to know what I would do? Meggan told Kaycee that she should draw out everything she had and give it all at once through her port, and then asked, do you want me to come over and do it? Continuing her subterfuge, Kaycee pretended that she had made attempts using insulin to kill herself. She would text Meggan that she had tried to do it, and she started to, this lie again continued to grow and grow and grow. And the details of it became so outlandish that it appears to be a cry for help. She knew she was making ridiculous claims, Kaycee, thinking, I believe, that Meggan would catch on and call her on it. Kaycee told Meggan that she had used 4 bottles of insulin. That is 400 times the amount that Meggan had told Kaycee she would need to cause her death. At a later point, Kaycee told Meggan she had used 9 bottles, 900 times what she would need, and she was still alive and kicking. Meggan didn't call her on it. She continued, the conversations. Oh, I can't believe that didn't kill you. And it continued to progress. Eventually, Kaycee pretended to be in hospice care, that there were nurses and doctors coming over to her house all the time. She concocted a story about a surgery that her doctor, Dr. Masteller, was going to do for her, arrange for her, that would allow her to absorb medication so she could die. That was one of her stories. Another story, she would send just ridiculous vitals to Meggan, knowing that Meggan was a nurse, and those vitals would be things like a temperature of 75 or a blood pressure of 0/40. Just insane, ridiculous, stupid numbers. And Meggan never called her on it. But these stories continued to grow. Kaycee fabricated an entire hospice care team, and they would communicate, these fake people would communicate with Meggan through Kaycee's phone.
But let me ask you this though. If I don't know about y'all, but if it's my family, best friend, whatever, and they're telling these outlandish stories, and do like to this extreme. I'm not talking about a little, I'm talking about like this. Creating a whole hospice team is a little bit extreme. How do you not advise them to get psych help? That's wild to me.
There was a fake nurse called Becky with whom Meggan would communicate on Kaycee's phone. There was a doctor, Dr. Robinson.
It is.
She pretended, Kaycee pretended to have Dr. Masteller coming to her home. There was, like I said, there was a whole team of these people, and they would communicate pretty regularly with Meggan, telling her, oh, she's near death. She's almost there. Meggan always expressed excitement about that. Oh, I hope it's true.
Why do I have this? What the fuck? Sorry, y'all. I'm trying. Do they put ads into things now? I have premium. I shouldn't have ads. That's crazy. I'm sorry. I don't know why that happens.
Instruction number 2, information, plea, and burden of proof.
Sorry.
The prosecution has filed a document called an information that contains the charges against the defendant. The information is not evidence of anything. It is only a method of accusing a defendant.
But why would I have an ad? That was the weirdest shit, because the ad was playing while this was playing. That's weird. Did they just insert it? I don't get ads.
Of a crime. The information will now be read. The state of Utah, by and through the Utah County Attorney's Office, charges the defendant with the commission of the following offenses. Count 1, aggravated murder. Count 2, obstruction of justice in criminal investigations or proceedings.
Right.
The defendant has entered a plea of not guilty and denies committing the crimes. Every crime has component parts called elements. The prosecution must prove each element beyond a reasonable doubt. Until then, you must presume the defendant is not guilty. The defendant does not have to prove anything. She does not have to testify, call witnesses, or present evidence. Instruction number 3, proof beyond a reasonable doubt. The prosecution has the burden of proving the defendant guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Some of you may have served as jurors in.
I think that this is all well known. I want to see testimony. I don't want to see this shit. Hold on, y'all.
Is the state ready to proceed?
We are, Your Honor.
If you want to turn this towards the jury, or
Could we talk about, does anybody else think that the judge in other case, the Corey Richards case, is super young to be a judge? Does anybody think that? Because every time I see that judge, I'm like, I think this is the youngest judge I've ever seen. Because I have him sped up though, Lily. Every time they show him, I'm like, he looks young. He's definitely the youngest judge I have ever seen, ever in my entire life. Right. That's what I'm saying. Right. Okay. So it's not just me.
a little bit more towards the jury, if that would be
Well, I
helpful, you
have
can
anything?
certainly do so.
I
As
agree.
far as it goes.
It may, I don't know.
Well, good morning. All right. After a long slog yesterday, we're here. I wanted to add one quick thing to that last thing the judge just told you about note taking, because this frequently comes up with jurors. They want to rehear testimony or have it read back or things like that. That's not possible. The court doesn't have that capacity, and it's just not going to be available.
What? Hold on a second. They don't have the capacity. We did that in boarding school. The jurors, when we were at the poll trial that Friday, right? Because we thought they'd be done on Friday. And the jury came back with a question. They requested to get a part of victim two's testimony so that they could go through, and they were given it. Is it just this court? The jury did that twice, actually, in the poll trial. There were things that they wanted clarification for. That's crazy. That's crazy.
So what that means is what you hear is that's the only time you're going to hear it. So whether that means you take a lot of notes or that you're paying really super good attention, that's
Utah.
up to you. But I just wanted you to know that in advance. Meggan Sundwall over here had a plan. Her plan was that she would go to her friend Kaycee Terry's house. She would inject her with insulin and monitor her blood glucose until Kaycee died.
But wouldn't it be? Can't we test? How was the insulin administered? Right? If it was given via right, obviously, there would be. Why would they exclude that DNA on the rig? I don't know. Something's going on.
We know that's her plan because she had text messages to Kaycee telling her that. On August 12th, 2024, Meggan put that plan into action. Kaycee didn't die that day,
I don't know.
but she did slip into a coma from profound hypoglycemia, which is low blood sugar. And 3 days later, she was removed from life support and died. That is a really teeny.
Oh, Heather, baby. I need screenshots of that. Is that you, Mindy? Is that you? Don't you worry what I got going on, baby. Don't you worry. You just might get lucky and that transcript might be played. Then what are you going to do? Look all dumb and shit. It could never be me. Ever in a million years.
Little nutshell of what the trial is going to be about.
Can't sue people for the truth, Mindy. You understand that, right? You could sue people for lies. You might want to look into that. But something tells me that your education level, it ain't going to matter.
There is a heck of a lot more information about the how and why.
Yeah, mahalo, same.
It kind of reminds me of that art form of pointillism, where you see up close, if you're looking, right up close, you see a bunch of little dots or little colors that don't make much sense, seemingly randomly arranged, until you have them all in place and you step back and you see the whole picture, and then it all makes sense. Then you see what it all means. And that is what is going to happen, I expect, with this case. There are a lot of witnesses that each have a little bit of the points that will contribute.
Do you know that because I have like the legal stuff going on, do you know I had to count how many times Mindy was blocked on TikTok? Do you know that she's been blocked on 50 different accounts on TikTok? You want me to repeat that? She's been blocked on 50 different accounts on TikTok. But she's got a life, right? The fuck? Go find your chomo husband, Mindy.
Your understanding of what happened. Some of those witnesses have a whole bunch of things.
Legit, a bit.
And they don't necessarily follow sequentially, which is why I wanted to give you kind of a heads up about what to watch for, what it is that they're going to be letting you know about, what their evidence is anticipated to be. Let me first tell you a little bit about Kaycee. And throughout this morning, I'm going to refer to them by their first names. I don't mean any disrespect by that, by any means.
Kaycee is the victim, alleged victim.
It's just for simplicity and because my little brain can't function any better than that. So I am going to refer to them as Kaycee and Meggan, if that's all right with everybody here. But Kaycee, at the time of her death, was 38 years old. She was a granddaughter, a sister, a niece.
I'm glad.
A valued employee, still loved ex-wife, and a friend. She had had some...
It's embarrassing for you, Mindy. You know that, right? You know it's not over, right? You do know that. You do know that, right? You do know that without prejudice, that's an important part here. You know that, right? Because I'm sure that if she went through that flash drive, she knows that I got the proof to get it. You don't know that though, right? I bet you don't. Mindy doesn't have enough fucking... Right, exactly, Lily. It's fucking... I would be so fucking embarrassed. So embarrassed chasing people around all day, thinking I'm doing something. Ugh.
Loss in her early life, or actually...
Maybe I'll write your chomo, Mindy. I'll think about it.
In her life leading up to her death, she had lost her mother when she was only about 4 years old to an extended illness. The aunt that she had that stepped in a mother role also died from an extended illness. She had a cousin she was close to that died, and her father died when she was only 24 years old.
That's sad, y'all. That's sad.
So she had a lot of loss. She herself had been born with only one kidney.
I know.
That wasn't a
Tracy, don't worry. Don't worry. Don't you worry.
huge deal, but it did present some health issues to her as time went on. At the time of her death, she also did have some valid medical concerns that did give her a lot of pain. One of those being endometriosis, one of them being prematurely and heavily arthritic knees. She had a lot of pain from those conditions.
Linda, I don't think that she knows how to read anything. I'm just being honest. I'm not aware. She said that Kim Rhea was a black woman. Hi. A black woman. She said that Kim Rhea was a black woman.
And was prescribed medications for those conditions. She had prescribed oxycodone or Percocet. She had prescribed Xanax because she also suffered from anxiety pretty heavily. Her doctor, Dr. Masteller, who you'll hear from, had discontinued the Xanax prescription because he didn't want those on board at the same time. Kaycee still wanted her Xanax and did admittedly go about getting it by probably less than legal.
I would have probably done the reverse because it seems like the Xanax might have been a little bit more necessary than the Oxy, but what do I know?
She also, at the time she died, had a prescription for something called promethazine. It is diagnosed largely for nausea, but kind of makes people sleepy. And you will hear about that from her physicians as well, and the function of it. She had also had, at probably 2020-ish, a port installed in her chest. A port is like a little teeny doorway that leads directly into a vein, so that
What was the port for? Does anybody know?
when you have a condition that requires frequent IV
Administration.
occurrences, you don't have to keep finding a new vein to puncture. You just put it directly into the port. And she had that port for IV fluids, for hydration, because that was a side effect of her kidney issues.
Makes sense.
Another
I know.
another characteristic of Kaycee that is relevant to this trial and plays heavily into it, and not to speak ill of the dead in any way, but Kaycee was alive. She told a series of lies. You will hear about them. One thing I think the evidence would support is that those lies were designed to get and keep people's attention and interest. She didn't know a better way than to feign some type of illness or for some reason to create drama and draw people to her that way.
Yeah, for sure.
One of those lies.
No, this is about a nurse that is on trial right now for encouraging her friend to unalive herself using mass doses of insulin because she was the beneficiary of the policy.
Well, let me come back to that.
I just found it today. I didn't know that it existed until about an hour ago.
In around this time frame, probably 2013, 2016-ish, Kaycee met Meggan.
Kaycee, y'all are just about 1,000 out there, huh?
They both worked at a facility called Chrysalis in Provo. That is a facility that offers services to people that are developmentally delayed or impaired. Kaycee was a house manager there for inpatient residents, and Meggan was hired as a nurse. She's an RN, and that was her function there. Kaycee actually met
was. Even if she's found not guilty, this is going to be a whole fucking problem for that license.
Meggan within her function as a nurse when Kaycee came to Meggan to take her blood pressure. They kind of hit it off. They got along really well. Their relationship or friendship developed, and they became very, very close.
Nice.
So much so that Kaycee spent a lot of time with both Meggan and her parents, her family, and they sort of took her in. There will be some testimony from some family and friends of Kaycee's that it was kind of an odd relationship in that Kaycee seemed to be afraid of making Meggan upset or making her mad, and that she would do whatever she could to keep Meggan happy.
Oh.
Along those lines, probably in that same time frame in 2016, Kaycee conveyed to Meggan that Meggan, was a beneficiary of Kaycee's life insurance policy. She showed her documents that indicated there was
What time is it by me? 4:45.
up to $1.5 million that Meggan was going to be the beneficiary of. That was an ongoing topic between them from about 2019, 2020,
Really?
all the way up until just a couple months before Kaycee died. Meggan seeking assurance that policy was still in effect, and Kaycee giving her assurances that it was in effect. The truth is, there was no such policy.
Oh, shut up. Hold on a second. Hold on a second, y'all. There was no policy. So this nurse, ex-RN, potentially had something to do with her friends unaliving for the policy that there never was? Oopsie poopsie. Oh yeah, that's bad.
That was another one of Kaycee's lies. Kaycee, I don't know if any of you ever watched, or your kids, I should say, watched VeggieTales. There was, my kids did when they were younger, there was one episode where one of the characters told a little fib, and it was this cute little bean that throughout the episode, the more the lie grew, this little bean grew and grew and grew and grew until it was this overwhelming size that was just going to take over and just overcome the character's life. That was kind of the case with Kaycee, because she told a lie that turned into a whopper. She told people, most particularly including Meggan, that she had cancer. She didn't have cancer. She never did have cancer. But she told that to family and friends, and they all believed her right up until she was hospitalized in that diabetic coma. That is a lie, just like VeggieTales, that grew and grew and grew. And
that's what happens with lies. That's why you should never tell them. There is never going to be a time where you just got to tell one lie. That one lie is going to turn into 25 lies in order to keep it going. It is never worth it. Never. It is. I don't understand that, but
that is part of the life insurance policy lie also, because she didn't really, at 38 years old, didn't expect to be making anybody necessarily a beneficiary.
Eldon, are y'all okay? So let me go this way. Who is watching the Corey Richards trial? Because her defense attorney, sometimes I'm like, what? I don't know what is going on with these attorneys that are public right now, but I'm like, where did y'all get your degree from? Because fuck, it's embarrassing.
Life insurance, except for this fake cancer that she had. In 2019, Kaycee texted Meggan, and this is one of the texts that, from which you could find that Kaycee was really just seeking care and concern from Meggan. But this text said, "Tell me that I'm not dying." And Meggan's response was not offering her affirming words or, live your life to the fullest while you have it or anything like that. She said, "I don't know if you're dying or not. I'm sorry. You need to be prepared no matter what happens."
I saw it. Yikes.
After this.
So, correct me if I'm wrong. All right. Correct me if I'm wrong. But as an RN, would that not be a call to 5150 or no? I would imagine that if I were an RN, a licensed RN, and one of my friends says that to me, I would automatically report it. But
medical port I told you about was installed. Kaycee portrayed that as being part of her cancer treatment. She told people that was for because of her cancer, and she had home health aides that would come to the house and help her with, doing that IV hydration, IV fluids. She had delivered to her home bags of saline for that purpose. That she told her family and friends that those bags of saline were her chemotherapy. The lie continued to grow. She portrayed to Meggan that she was close to death. She portrayed to Meggan that she was in tremendous pain from cancer and wished to be free of her pain. It was a frequent topic of conversation between the two, and we will show you. There are reams of text messages between these two. I think there are something like almost 29,000 text messages. We're not going to show you all of them. That we would be here the rest of the year. But we'll show you some. And there was one in 2020 where Meggan told Kaycee, "There is nothing left for you here." She told her also in 2020, you have so much more for you on the other side. In 2021, she told her, what do you have to live for in this life? I truly believe everything for you is ahead of you, not here.
I can honestly say, y'all, that I don't think that I've ever used those words with anybody. And you're a nurse? What in the actual fuck? That is fucking insane to me. So in my mind, right, the only logical motive here is that life insurance policy that wasn't.
And then another one where she told her with caps, you have to let go. It is past time. Again, this is in the context of Kaycee's wanting to keep Meggan happy and do what she wanted her to do. And Kaycee went along with those text messages. She did pretend to be suicidal. She portrayed herself as being interested in.
No, this is the one. She's her and her friend, a nurse, encouraged her friend to die from an insulin-related overdose.
Her pain, the pain that didn't exist for the cancer that didn't exist.
Right.
At some point, Kaycee, this was in 2020, Kaycee was living at Meggan's home with Meggan's husband lived there too. And their conversations turned towards different, they discussed different means of ending Kaycee's life. One of them was a gun. Kaycee had access to a gun. Another was an overdose of pills.
I just want to know if there was at any point, an idea of how about you go get you some mental health help? Was that suggested in this time period? Yeah, they lived together.
Of course, Kaycee had access to all of that oxycodone and other substances. They settled on, eventually, insulin. Meggan told Kaycee around September 1st of 2020 that she had checked with a pharmacist friend of hers and that she would need about 100 units to end her life. 100 units of insulin is a little teeny amount. It's actually only a milliliter. There's 10 milliliters per bottle. So those last diabetics a good amount of time. And Kaycee's family had a number of diabetics in it. There was insulin available at Kaycee's home where she lived after she moved out of Meggan's home because her uncle lived there as well. He is diabetic. You'll hear from him. Her grandparents live there. Her grandmother is diabetic. And uncle had recently died earlier that year.
Listen, Mongoose, I would assume, right? Like, I would assume that they're supposed to do something other than provide the insulin. That this is bad.
And he was diabetic too. So there was a lot of insulin, a lot of supplies accessible in that home. So Meggan and Kaycee discussed the idea of Kaycee's dying by insulin overdose. Meggan told Kaycee that it would be easy. She would just fall asleep. And it wouldn't even necessarily be detectable at autopsy because it's a naturally occurring substance. Within a day or two of that discussion, Meggan brought home insulin and stored it in the refrigerator and then texted Kaycee a number of times over the next week or so. Hey, that insulin's there if you want it. Don't forget the insulin. Are you going to use the insulin tonight? That insulin's still there. Aren't you going to use it? Kaycee, around that point, had communicated with Kaylee that she thought Meggan was trying to kill her. And so Kaylee and her husband, they waited until.
So Meggan, who is the RN, Meggan is providing, right, Kim? While the victim is telling everybody else that Meggan's trying to kill her. And we heard this already. I don't know how that happened. I didn't go back.
Meggan and her family left town and they kind of swooped in and moved Kaycee out of that house. At that point, both Kaylee, the sister, and another friend of Kaycee's saw the insulin in the fridge. You know, quite honestly, I don't know if Kaycee really believed at that point that Meggan was trying to kill her. But I do believe that this is another story that Kaycee used it was drama. It was something to elicit concern from the other people in her life, from Kaylee.
But nobody thought that the levels that Kaycee was willing to take this in order to elicit attention and concern was alarming. No, nobody thought that might warrant some mental health help. Nobody thought that, because this is fucking wild.
And her friends. Anyway, she moved out of that house. She moved into a basement apartment at her grandparents' home in Highland. And as I mentioned, also living there was another uncle initially, who died in January of 2024, lived there as well.
Oh, is that where she got the extra?
During that time frame, that did not end the discussions about insulin and insulin overdose. Meggan asked Kaycee in 2021 if Kaycee was nervous to do it by yourself. And then she asked her, "You want to know what I would do?" Meggan told Kaycee that she should draw out everything she had and give it all at once through her port, and then asked, "Do you want me to come over and do it?" Continuing her subterfuge, Kaycee pretended that she had made attempts using insulin to kill herself. She would text Meggan that she had tried to do it, and she started to, this lie again continued to grow and grow and grow. And the details of it became so outlandish that it appears to be a cry for help. She knew she was making ridiculous claims, Kaycee, thinking, I believe, that Meggan would catch on and call her on it. Kaycee told Meggan that she had used 4 bottles of insulin. That is 400 times the amount that Meggan had told Kaycee she would need to cause her death. At a later point, Kaycee told Meggan she had used 9 bottles, 900 times what she would need, and she was still alive and kicking. Meggan didn't call her on it. She continued, the conversations. "Oh, I can't believe that didn't kill you." And it continued to progress. Eventually, Kaycee pretended to be in hospice care, that there were nurses and doctors coming over to her house all the time. She concocted a story about a surgery that her doctor, Dr. Masteller, was going to do for her, arrange for her, that would allow her to absorb medications so she could die. That was one of her stories.
And nobody, bless it, nobody thought, hey, like, did they not talk to each other? Nobody in this entire situation was like, this is getting a little crazy now, and maybe we should intervene and do something. Like, what the fuck is wrong with people?
Another story, she would send just ridiculous vitals to Meggan, knowing that Meggan was a nurse, and those vitals would be things like a temperature of 75 or a blood pressure of 0/40. Just insane, ridiculous.
And still no intervention here as an RN? What?
Stupid numbers. And Meggan never called her on it.
Hey, mahalo.
But these stories continued to grow. Kaycee
Her family, Lily Grace, Utah. Right. Did the RN was just not paying attention?
fabricated an entire hospice care team. And they would communicate, these fake people would communicate with
that's what I
Meggan
said.
through Kaycee's phone.
I didn't go back though. Look,
There was a fake nurse called Becky with whom Meggan would
I didn't
communicate on Kaycee's phone.
didn't we just
Meggan had lost her job. She had run over something on the road and caused $4,000 worth of damage to her car. The car ended up being totaled.
okay, I didn't hear that.
Her husband had doubled his child support requirements from a prior marriage. They owed on taxes. And then the car that they did have kept overheating. So she was stressed financially. She expressed in February of 2024 to Kaycee, Kaycee expressed to Meggan, "I wish I could just pass so you could get out of this mess." And Meggan's response was, "If you dying would get me out of this mess and darkness I am in, I would take it."
And remember, there's no life insurance policy.
When police got there and realized that Meggan had been there and had left with her parents without waiting for EMS to arrive, without telling them what to look for to try to correct for Kaycee, they instigated an investigation. Meggan was pretty cooperative. She talked to them a number of times. And during an interview on August 15th, police asked her for her phone so they could look at the text messages that she had been describing, telling them that Kaycee was suicidal. Meggan agreed. She didn't hand over the phone right then and there, but she did bring it to them on August 19th. When police went through that phone and compared Kaycee's phone text messages with the text messages on Meggan's phone, they found that 283 of them had been deleted from Meggan's phone.
That's just stupid. Why are some of these criminals so fucking dumb? Because if they really wanted to, they would just subpoena the phone company.
When police asked her about that, she told them that she did it so she wouldn't look like she had done what Kaylee was accusing her of, which was murdering Meggan, or Kaycee, sorry.
Kaylee is Kaycee's sister.
For deleting those messages, Meggan Sundwall is charged with obstruction of justice. That is simply, I want to make sure I'm saying it right, when someone alters or destroys anything, such as the text messages, with the intent to hinder, delay, or prevent a criminal investigation. That one's the easy charge. The other one is aggravated murder. Aggravated murder happens when somebody intentionally or knowingly causes the death of another and does so with aggravating circumstances. The aggravating circumstances that are alleged in this case are that she did it for pecuniary or financial gain, or that she did it by means, again, I want to make sure I give you the right language.
Dear gosh.
Causing death by means of a substance administered in a lethal amount. So the question that you will be probably spending most of your time.
I don't know about y'all, but even the stuff that I do know, aside from the things that I don't know, because I just found this case, it doesn't look very good.
Timeline is cause. What does it mean to cause someone's death? Cause does not mean in the law in Utah that she had to be the sole cause.
Correct.
Meggan did not have to be the only reason that Kaycee died. If you find beyond a reasonable doubt that Kaycee would not have died but for the actions of Meggan, that is sufficient.
Oh yeah, big time. That's we would have gotten to like opening statements and be like, she did it, she's guilty.
I expect that
this is
my friend over here is going to argue in a minute that Kaycee was suicidal and that she did everything she did herself. I also,
but that can't be true if the nurse provided the insulin. And the nurse, I want y'all to understand me, the nurse, okay, instead of attempting to get her friend any type of psychological help, which she clearly needed, right? With the blood pressure, whatever the fuck she just said of 0/100, whatever. That's you need treatment. So that failure is certainly fucking, this is crazy.
expect that he's probably going to spend a lot of time talking to you about reasonable doubt. And that's a hard concept to define. It's something that people struggle with quite regularly, at least in our field. It is reasonable doubt. It is not beyond all doubt or with no doubt, because we can't know anything in life. We don't even know for sure if the sun's going to come up tomorrow. There is, okay, not a lot, but there's probably doubt about that. So you don't have to be convinced beyond all doubt. But if you find from all of the information that's available to you that you are firmly convinced what the state has alleged happened, then that is enough. We talked earlier about the concept of pointillism and how all of those little points form a big picture. And the little points, just so you know who is coming, that are contributory to this picture, will include Kaycee's sister Kaylee and her uncle Mark, her best friend Michelle Tingley, her ex-husband Kaycee, her family calls him Boy Kaycee, Kaycee Tanner, a friend, Christian Clements, Kaycee's employer, Mike Larson. You will hear from Meggan's parents, who were there for some of that incident that night on August 12th, Leroy and Renee Randall. Additional information will come from her doctors, Dr. Masteller, the doctor who performed her knee surgery, Dr. West. There is a nurse that communicated regularly with Kaycee. Her name is Amber Ludvigsen. There is a nurse practitioner who took care of Kaycee while she was comatose. Her name is Diane Allred. You'll hear from her. You will hear from one of the first emergency responders to arrive at the house that night. That is Lone Peak Police Officer Norman Robinson. I believe at the time the call came in was that they were responding to just an overdose or possibly a suicide, and treated it accordingly. You will hear from the investigating officers, Melissa Farney, Lone Peak Police Department detective, and Richard Hales, who has a really long title of Special Agent with the Utah County Attorney's Office Investigations Bureau. I spit it out. You will hear from the medical examiner that was in this case, operated in this case, or conducted an autopsy, Dr. Ben Murray. Also the toxicologist, Scott Larson. You'll hear from also the special agent from the Utah County Attorney's Office that did the phone downloads, Justin Seitzinger.
Right. I don't know what.
You also hear from another medical examiner who didn't do the autopsy, but has experience with insulin overdose cases to provide some.
Does it not seem like it's forever? Right. It's like, what are you doing?
And also an endocrinologist who has specialty in the effect of insulin on the human body, on the system. And she will be testifying. Her name is Dr. Kaycee DeSalvo. So those witnesses will give you all those bits and pieces. Like I said, some of them are massive, some of them are tiny, but they all form that big picture, that overall picture.
Do you need that many witnesses in this case? Like, I don't know about y'all. Oh my God, remember Jodi Arias? I was obsessed with that case too. Do you need that many witnesses to put your, because I don't think you do.
I believe you will find that Kaycee neither wanted nor intended to die on August 12th. Even though she pretended, she did want to in an increasingly desperate attempt to keep Meggan's attention and affection. The evidence tends to establish that Kaycee thought she could handle Meggan, but she didn't count on Meggan's determination. Meggan was there. Meggan was in control. Meggan had the means and the knowledge and the understanding, and Meggan stood to gain from Kaycee's death. Meggan wanted Kaycee to die to relieve her from the stress of her financial situation.
Yeah, Jodi Arias was rough.
And that plan worked.
Yes, Lily? I'm like, what the fuck is happening here? I feel like she's been talking for a fucking hour.
Kaycee died from an overdose of insulin. At the end of this trial, after you hear from all those people, we will again stand before you and ask that you find Meggan Sundwall guilty of having done so, guilty of aggravated murder, and guilty of obstruction of justice. Thank you.
Thank God. Holy hell. Okay, so I'm not alone, right? Like, that was, like, do you put the whole case into the opening statement? I thought it was like a blueprint of, like, where we're going, the abridged version. No?
See if I can plug my computer in. I do have a bit of a PowerPoint, which might surprise.
How do we want to take bets on if the defense is like a lot shorter? I bet this defense attorney gets it done real quick.
Excuse me.
Well, I guess not. Right.
Given the gray in my beard. But when you see me use the PowerPoint, you'll see that I still don't know how to do it very well. And I'm not doing it to impress you. That's for sure.
What? How fucking rude. No.
It'll warm up.
No, how was he not just fucking rude? Or no? What is up with these attorneys that they're putting on? This is crazy. Yeah, Jodi Arias, Arizona.
Mr. Williams, if you're going to be walking around, I need you to get that wireless mic on.
Judge, I have never had a problem with that. I'm not often accused of being too quiet. Can I ask that Brooke let me know if it's not working? Is that okay, Judge?
As long as you're near a mic.
Okay, I'll do my best.
Otherwise, we can't pick up everything.
I'll stay here. One juror trying to reach Cole's attention to see if, I don't know if the TV can go a little higher.
I don't know that it can. We can work on that.
Yeah, this one's kind of maybe on break.
Yeah, we'll try to do it on break.
This one's stuck. So.
Like I said, this PowerPoint may not be that important, maybe helping me more than you anyway. I'm not going to stand up, as my colleague said, and tell you what I believe. That's not what opening statements are even allowed for. What I believe is not what I'm going to be talking to you about. I'm not going to argue. I'm not allowed to argue here. This is to be a conversation about what a trial is about and for, what applies in the way of important principles that you then will keep in your mind, keep with you, keep in your heart as you take in evidence. Evidence that must prove a murder. Not little dots that might make one out of an argument. Not going to argue. I'd like to talk more about the importance and solemnity principle of what we're doing here.
Yes.
Not because I think you need me to.
How'd you guess, Mindy? I think that you're obsessed with me. Do you know that? I fucking hate chomos, but I might just waste my time to email your husband.
But I'm going to anyway.
I'll bet that he would say you're a psycho too.
We're not at the water cooler. We're not at a home conversation. We're not in a TV show. We're in the most solemn place in our society. We're in the four corners of the courtroom. And we are applying in this case, you are applying in this case, we all are, principles, right, that our country's built on. That the blood of men and women in our service has been spilled on foreign soil to support. And I ask you to make those live every minute of this trial with every witness that is speaking to you and bringing information to you. In light of the government's burden, according to those principles, to bring proof, not argument, proof of murder, that Meggan murdered her best friend. And you've already had the level of proof read to you. It's in your instructions. What proof beyond reasonable doubt means. Real possibility. It'll be whether there's a real possibility that that didn't happen, that it's not proven. And yeah, it's got to be murder for money.
I'm trying to see.
You wonder about suicide because that's not murder for money. Although it will be illegal, and you'll learn this at the end, you can't do something. You can't act in this state in aid of someone who is, according to what you believe, committing suicide.
Wait, what? Is that a thing? I don't believe that. You can't aid somebody in Utah. Is that a thing? Not for an RN, certainly. So even if it was a fucking thing, okay, it didn't apply to the licensed individual. No, absolutely not.
And quite frankly, that applies to if this person, in this case, Kaycee Terry, doesn't intend to commit suicide. In fact, it's just faking it and overdoing it to her demise. And so the single question I submit, or the largest question, not a dot, but a question under the principles that apply, is will the state prove by evidence, beyond a reasonable doubt, with no real possibility to the contrary, that something happened in that room that Kaycee Terry could not have done to herself? I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to elaborate a little bit more on the evidence that I expect you to see. I ask you to keep in mind that it's because the state has this burden that they go first. And witnesses are witnesses, I submit to you. They're not the state's witnesses, although, of course, you'll see and it will be obvious biases the state's witnesses have. They know what team they're on. But they're still just witnesses. And when I ask questions, I ask you to pay attention, of course, to those answers and how they're answered, keeping these principles in mind as well. There will, however, also be evidence that you would expect in a case.
What about you, Rock? What do you miss most about home?
What the fuck is
Forensic testing,
him for?
medical information and testing, and those sorts of things as well. And there'll be an investigation spoken of by Detective.
So the screen says, must prove murder for money, must prove no suicide attempt, must prove no fake suicide, I think it says.
Barney, and by Richard Hales,
Right.
who worked in tandem, although as you'll learn, Richard Hales works with the prosecution.
Yeah, I got him sped up. I think they're on 1.5.
And I'm going to be critical of that. I'll get to that in a moment. I'll tell you why. I think that effort isn't going to have been fair to you in your decision making in terms of the burdens of proof. Kaycee, Terry, Meggan, I'm going to put that up. Sundwall. I don't think it's going to be disagreed. Are become the closest friends that you could imagine.
Villain.
And how it became that way, I think the evidence will show, is extraordinarily important, because you will find that Kaycee Terry is exhausting in the attention that she seeks from Meggan. Exhausting. In the way that she seeks that attention and engages in this friendship is just to bombard Meggan with her complete misery with being on this planet.
So that means that she encourages her to unalive herself. Is that what you're telling me? I've had exhausting friends, trust me, but that doesn't mean I would encourage them to unalive themselves, especially if you hold a license in a profession that you are bound to help with. Yes,
And constantly telling Meggan that Meggan is the only one that she can have a secret, confident relationship in about wanting to pass. And I think it will be clear, and certainly in Meggan's mind, spiritually relieved by passing from this earth. Now, the way she gains that, part of the friendship the evidence will show, is not only to just bombard and constantly talk to Meggan about how Kaycee wants to die and wants Meggan to be part of that. We're going to talk in a minute about Lee and Manet.
I just want to make sure she had the right to say no, right? She had the right to say, I think you need some mental health help, not provide the fucking insulin and the idea to do it. What the fuck are you even talking about?
Meggan's parents, who were there, because they had been asked by Kaycee Terry repeatedly to give blessings to Kaycee as she was going to die. They had gone to do that before, based on what Kaycee was claiming. Kaycee Terry absolutely planted beans that were going to grow. I might talk back on and forth on this a little bit.
Is Meggan an incapacitated adult or a fucking RN? Am I listen? Am I wrong here? Is she somebody that is not capable of making sound decisions? Or is she an educated, professional, registered nurse? Because I'm a little confused here.
Sure. You heard Ms. Thomas mention that the Kaycee Terry was a liar, and that is extraordinarily important in this case. Certainly, we all probably know people we think are liars, and it affects our lives one way or another, depending on the importance and the nature and severity and their ability to get us to believe.
So fuck the block button, right? Is that what I'm hearing? I'm hearing that this guy expects the jury to say, fuck the block button or getting her mental health help. We're going to provide the plan, encourage her to do it, and provide the fucking insulin for her to do it. What in the fuck?
It's extraordinary, you will see in the evidence.
Right. I'll say that.
Kaycee Terry's ability to make people believe these lies. Not just the lies themselves being extraordinary, the extent to which she could make people believe them. Kaycee Terry lied about this cancer, for instance. She perpetuated and maintained the lie that she had terminal cancer. She described it to one person's blood, described it to another as leukemia of some sort. She would describe that she had terminal cancer, you will see from the evidence that, of course, that is planting a bean to get attention. And you'll see that she split the way she lied this to different people who would give her different sorts of different attention in different ways and have a different.
And none of those people communicated with each other. Right, exactly, Lily. None of these people communicated with each other about these extravagant exactly, Mongoose. You got like, I am astounded that this is even
ability to fool. That is what she used, that lie, among others, but that lie to constantly get the response from Meggan.
Guess what was the wrong response? As an educated, licensed medical professional, it looked quite literally could have been any other fucking response necessary, and she wouldn't be in this situation. It is a choice that she made. Right, exactly.
Of sympathy, confederacy, privacy, closeness, spirituality. And this is fueled by Kaycee Terry to seek attention. But she's so good at this lie. Not only, I don't know if the state's going to ultimately ask you to believe it, Meggan didn't believe it, but her own family, Kaycee Terry's the evidence will be her own family believed it. A family that before her death, she lived with for years in the same house.
Right.
A good family, a very good family. Mark Farnsworth, when you hear what that poor man has been through and his intelligence.
Y'all, his intelligence, but he couldn't or wouldn't see that this woman was feigning illnesses as a means for attention. And people, normal individuals do not go to those lengths to lie. There's clearly an issue here. A normal person is not going to have a fucking port installed and pump themselves with saline claiming it's chemotherapy. That is not normal. I don't know what the fuck is going on over there, but that is not normal. And if that was somebody in my family that was going that far with this lie, like they would have, like you would have had to get them help.
And notwithstanding that, you would take her to the hospital for visits that were fake at midnight all the time. She would make these people take her around with fake treatments.
And not one of those people heard these medical. I'm so fucking confused. Good night, Gen X.
For years. And it's because they believed her. They learned she didn't have any cancer. They learned she didn't have these other ailments. You talked about kidney disease. They learned she was healthy when she died, according to the doctors. They learned it from the doctors at the hospital. The bean that continued to grow,
Right.
the evidence is going to show, and I say this in light of the question about whether Kaycee Terry was suicidal like she claimed 4 years and claimed it that night. There's a script for this night when we get to that. I mean, a script literally in text messages. She did this for years, as the evidence is going to show, as I mentioned, but things were escalating. She was calling the doctor more and more towards the end. She was talking about anxiety, depression. She talked to the doctor, mentioned suicide. You're going to hear that. She talked about suicide to some people. She certainly ramped up her supposed misery level. It's not just opiate use and opiate abuse and opiate addiction that was going on with Kaycee Terry. Kaycee Terry was buying, selling, exchanging drugs with other people.
Oh.
It was ramping up. Another thing that was ramping up.
In other words, what I think you're trying to say is that it was escalating. Correct. Thank you, Lily. What in the and everybody was just like, like, what the fuck?
Kaycee Terry was stealing from her grandparents that she was living with. Grandparents that her role in that house was to take care of.
Oh my goodness.
In the house where Mark lived, and then Mark's parents, Kaycee's grandparents, who her grandmother was suffering from mental health disease, dementia, and
you don't say.
Her grandfather was old and trying to take care of mom, but Mark knew that they needed help, and then Mark believed that Kaycee needed help. Now, Kaycee was hopefully going to contribute to this household by helping her grandparents. Well, what she was doing is stealing from them. And towards August 12th, it really ramped up. It ramped up, and it ramped up. Her use was getting the money with these people she was involved in with the drug interactions, and it came to a head. There was some mention, roughly, I think we're going to hear from Mark about a week before
Right? Crazy.
Kaycee died, that Mark had some concerns about the billings that later you're going to hear were found to have been repeatedly and constantly intercepted by Kaycee to hide her stealing, and the use of the credit cards. And that Kaycee was probably present, probably over her debt, probably knew, and frankly was asked to cancel the credit card, which she never did.
Oh,
So as you contemplate the state's position that it's somehow ludicrous to believe that Kaycee Terry was actually maybe going to take the off-ramp that she had created, the evidence will show, you'll be able to contemplate whether the being had grown out of control. And she knew that life as she knew it, as a liar, had to finally get the critical breaking point, and it was going to come out.
that's possible.
Now, Meggan Sundwall you'll hear about was an easy mark for Kaycee Terry. The evidence will show, and it will show through the very communications that are going to be introduced. I submit to you, cherry-picked to the extent out of 28,000 text messages that go on. Of course, there's phone calls, they have meetings, these people are friends. At one point, as you heard, they lived together. Meggan and Mitch let Kaycee live with them. That she never called her on it, is what you just heard. The evidence is going to show. Meggan wouldn't call her on it.
That's
when
what I don't.
Kaycee would tell her stuff that was ridiculous. I'm 70.
That's what I don't understand here. We're not talking about a normal individual that isn't trained in the medical professional. We're trained, like this person knows, and it blows my mind.
74-degree temperature. You're going to see and hear that happened all the time. Meggan offered unconditional love to Kaycee Terry. She didn't call her out on things.
You should have. That's what your friends do. What the fuck? What are you talking about? Yo.
You're going to hear that even her doctor didn't call her out on some stuff when Kaycee Terry, as her doctor, I expect, is going to agree and testify, use the medical service process to gain attention by coming up with false maladies. You're going to learn, there's going to be Kyle Hancock. He's a psychologist. He's clinical work and he's done expert work. And he can help you understand, even from an expert standpoint, not only about someone like Kaycee and someone like Meggan, but what that means in terms of those two types of people having a relationship and the dynamics of that. So as the government suggests that Meggan should have called her on it, stop being an unconditional friend,
Yes.
I think you'll be able to look from the evidence as to why that would be, to the extent that
Listen, there is an absolute different facts. There is an absolute difference between like faking fucking cancer, all right, and like lying about getting a coffee in the morning, okay? And the way that he's explaining it is it continued to escalate. It continued to escalate. So if she knew that she was lying and things were continuing to escalate, that is not a friend. She was hanging around for the 1.5 mil that now she's very well aware that doesn't exist. She was also encouraging her to commit suicide.
it's not already obvious. And quite frankly, throughout their relationship and throughout the conversations and throughout constant and exhausting pleas from Kaycee for Meggan to unconditionally accept what she said, unconditionally show love, and promise to see her through the end with blessings from her father and being present in a form of helping her by being present when she died. They were even referenced spiritually. Freedom from the pain that Kaycee was claiming in the form of a spiritual release. This is the room
Facts.
where Kaycee Terry essentially died.
There you go.
She went to the hospital and was taken off support, but I think the evidence is going to show she was never going to live after paramedics took her from this room. I blew that up. You can see on the left up next to her bed in a frame are Kaycee and Meggan, the closest thing to Kaycee when she essentially passed. This is the room that is the scene of what the supposed murder was. Whether or a suicide, we'll make it believe to be a suicide. It looked like a suicide. It's another fake that Kaycee overdid. The events. Yes, you're going to hear again about all of these communications, and some will be picked out that sound pretty bad if you don't know them in context, like I just described. But I think the evidence will show full context. Discussion about if you're so desperate, I hope you just do it. I hope you just commit suicide. I'll help you if I could. Meggan says she's being bombarded by Kaycee begging to go.
But that is never going to be something that a real friend or a medical professional should co-sign. Am I wrong here? Because if one of my friends came to me and said they're in so much pain, they can't take it anymore, I certainly would not tell them to do that.
And by the way, this is an insulin. It's not a new topic
Really?
in their relationship. You will see from the evidence that talking about dying by insulin in this always in terms of a suicide, a way to pass, had been talked to them, between them, for years and years. When she lived there, you'll see texts that show that because of that, Meggan would even bring it and have it in the house. They're not diabetics. There's no diabetics that live there. Kaycee's not a diabetic. It wasn't. Insulin isn't some suddenly nefarious factor in this case that showed up on the 12th. I'll talk a little bit in a minute about what you're going to hear about. Quite frankly, insulin, when she moves in to Mark's house, her grandparents' house, is everywhere, all the time, unaccounted for, all sorts of them, because Mark's a diabetic, mom's a diabetic, sister's a diabetic, and his brother Kyle's a diabetic, who unfortunately died in January of 24, so 7 months before what we're talking about here.
I'm just going to throw this in, all right? Nurses in Utah are mandated reporters, legally required to immediately report any child abuse, neglect, exploitation, to child and family services or law enforcement, okay? This duty extends to vulnerable adults, all right, including the elderly. Failure to report can result in professional, civil, and criminal penalties. All right. Now, call me crazy, but a fucking person that is telling me over and over and over that they are going to unalive themselves or going out of their way to create elaborate lies about illnesses that they don't have would be a vulnerable person. What?
So insulin's talked about as a method of suicide with Meggan in these texts. I think there's going to be witnesses that say they've seen it, and you're going to see that Kaycee is begging her to help her be able to have access to that and saying she's going to use insulin to kill herself. Well, apparently you're going to hear that she's telling her sister, Meggan's trying to kill me. Manipulating her sister at one point, to move her out of the house, where she's got to freeload in the basement of Mark's house and does basically nothing except deal with getting and using opiates and other drugs of abuse.
Right.
The events were scripted out in Texas, you'll see. They planned for Meggan to go be over there. And once again, that Kaycee would use insulin to engage in an overdose. And again, it's uncontroversial. She had the ability to get insulin anywhere she wanted in that house, and no one even know. Same for syringes.
Fucking right.
This port is different. You don't need a syringe for a port. You can inject something into a port through just a plunger type syringe. It doesn't have a needle.
Right.
You'll have evidence that probably wouldn't have been used. It caused the death here because of the different way it would act if you just put it right in the port versus subcutaneously. So that was the script. She was going to come over.
So wait, why would they not? I would imagine that because she was unconscious, that they would have had to find an instrument to deliver the insulin into the port, right? So why would that not be tested for fingerprints? No, that makes sense to me.
And-
Seems like the easiest way to decide if Kaycee did it or if Meggan did it.
And Kaycee would be there, Meggan would be there, and Kaycee would engage in an overdose. Suicide. When Meggan gets over there, Kaycee's already got a glucose reading instrument. There and ready. I think you're going to find out the police didn't even realize that she'd already taken a test result. And you can draw inferences as you go through this trial when you're that about why Kaycee Terry's already checking her blood before Meggan ever gets there. This glucometer, ultimately they find, was used to take a whole bunch of readings. In a minute, I'm going to show you, thank goodness, for Meggan, that this was used. Then throughout the day, eventually, because the glucometer tells us what Kaycee's condition was. And ultimately it deteriorates to the point that Meggan, who when she went over there, didn't know whether it was going to work, didn't know what was going to happen there, didn't know whether this was just yet another where Kaycee would say, yes, it didn't work. She had plans for an anniversary dinner with her parents that night, and then she worked at night as part of a second job.
Oh, that's
And had expected that she would be going to work. And when it was clear from the use of the glucometer that, and what she could observe, that Kaycee probably was done from her cancer and or the insulin overdose, she was not going to live. And so Meggan called her parents. And her parents left for dinner, or I can't remember, I'm sorry, they'd already started, but they abandoned their dinner plans and came over.
sad.
Dee and Renee went in there. No, I think the evidence will show that neither Kaycee, despite all these years, nor Meggan, is ever going to tell anyone that that's how Kaycee was going to pass. Part of the confidentiality, part of the sanctity of their relationship.
Right.
And as we're talking about in a minute, probably something that, quite frankly, even though she was willing to be present for, even encourage in terms of her release, not consistent with, she could get in trouble with work, her license, etc. Isn't letting her parents know what had been happening during that day, just that she was dying, and that Meggan had stayed with her. But what happens is, by the way, you're going to hear and see in the text message evidence that all through this time, Kaycee had constantly told Meggan she had to do not resuscitate a demon. She had constantly told Meggan that Meggan was going to be power of attorney. She had gone to burial plots to talk about places she was planning on being buried. She had told Kaycee.
Call Me Alexander's The Crossover is a book I always recommend, and it's perfect to kick off this year's NEA's.
Bella, by the way, is, I think, sister or brother to Meggan's dog, too. Came out of St. Glitter. She had told everyone else the evidence is going to show the opposite, that Meggan was some sort of awful person, that she was afraid of Meggan, that she thought Meggan was going to hurt her or kill her. What happens when Mark, the uncle, comes down from his office upstairs at 9?
Yeah, they have to. Yeah, ports can't be removed by
And by the way,
I guess they could theoretically, but they shouldn't be because of where it's placed.
I'll let the evidence play out on that day. I'm not sure what Mark's going to say from the stand. You may hear that some testimony has been given in various places in this lawsuit, and recorded interviews were given with witnesses, and so sometimes that may be needed to be used to refresh their recollection. The best I can tell you is what I expect, and you'll see it happen. But when Mark comes down, he calls Kaylee because of the distress, obvious distress, that Kaycee's in, and Kaylee loses it. She says, call the paramedics, Meggan is killing her. Immediate accusation. And sounds like, based on what I think that you'll find, were lies by Kaycee to Kaylee. Meggan calls Kaylee, and Kaylee lays into Meggan, get out of the house, you're killing her, I'm going to get you put away or take you out or something to that effect, and is screaming at Meggan accusations. The importance of that is for you to consider what Meggan does end up doing, which in a lot of ways made it look pretty bad. She now knows that someone's going to actively go after this.
So question, there's got to be proof that Kaycee told Kaylee that Meggan was trying to kill her then, right? I would imagine.
She ultimately on this subject speaks, she has this worried response. She does speak to the police, but she also, I think the evidence will show, realizing she's going to be accused, realizing she's there, maybe suicide will come up, it's on everyone's phones. deletes like 280 messages about insulin. I think the evidence would be over the course of all.
Okay, first and foremost, I'm just going to go out on a limb and say if she had nothing to hide, why the fuck did she delete those texts? If you have nothing to hide, why delete the texts? That's just my opinion.
Well, this communicating time, there's probably 5,000 messages with insulin in them. These are close in time and proximate to that date. Sure thing, I think the evidence can show that Meggan would have preferred not to have anyone know she was present when her friend passed. But does the evidence...
Right, but somebody that doesn't have, and I'm telling you, Peggy, somebody that doesn't have a reason to be worried would never delete the text, right? Because that's going to prove this conversation happened and that the things that Meggan alleges are true. Either way, it makes her look like shit. So why not just leave it? I would have left it. That's just me, though.
Prove she did something. You can't do something to help someone in suicide. And nobody hears. We all know you can't kill them. In her interviews, she doesn't tell the story. She explains what she did. She's not asked much. I think they're going to play the interviews. She doesn't tell what happened. In there, they used a glucometer. Kaycee was committing suicide. And she deletes these texts. Can't do that. Her worst reason is to make you look pretty bad. Police say that, because they're finding out about the deletions of texts and stuff. But police are telling her, doesn't look good for you. Deleting text does not look good for you. Being there with these texts and talking about insulin and insulin overdose does not look good for you. But
Okay. I just Googled, all right, is a nurse supposed to aid somebody in Utah if they are attempting suicide? All right. Google tells me, yes, a nurse in Utah and generally is ethically and professionally obligated to intervene. What are you talking about, homie? Provide care and ensure the safety of someone attempting suicide. Nurses must act to prevent self-harm, stabilize the person physically and emotionally, and facilitate immediate specialized mental health crisis intervention, all of which she failed to do. Okay? Key actions for nurses: ensure immediate safety, remove any means of self-harm, and provide one-on-one supervision. Provide emergency care, okay? Initiate first aid or life-saving measures, CPR if necessary. Assess and refer, okay? Immediately involve mental health professionals such as a school counselor, psychiatrist, or 988 crisis lifeline to evaluate risk. Supportive presence, engage with empathy, validate feelings, and remain with the individual until help arrives. Right. So I'm not understanding what he's trying to do here, but that might be the case for a civilian, but it's not going to be the case for a licensed fucking health professional. What?
in one interview, Richard Hales, Special Agent Hales, I'm going to work hard to get it right. My understanding is it's new, it's a Special Agent title, and so I refer to him, and everyone deserves their title. Detective, Special Agent Rich Hales. He explains what the principles we're applying in this court mean. Dead on. Does not look good for you. So we're doing other things.
I don't know.
DNA, forensics, medical. You're saying you didn't do anything. When he asked her the blunt question, did you do something? Did you do something in that room in relation to Kaycee's overdose on insulin? You said no, that's great, but if there's evidence to prove otherwise, we have a problem. Meaning, Meggan. Fair enough? And he says, yep. And if there's not, I will ride off into the sunset. There wasn't. All the efforts that were made with DNA, with serology, with toxicology, with medicine, with FBI labs. Everything that was tried, and unfortunately some very poor police work, compromised the ability to get results in some cases that we can rely on.
Oh, Lord.
Failed to prove in a court of law. Failed to be evidence and proof
It's
that Meggan did
spelled
something
wrong.
in that room.
My bad.
And the reason is confirmation bias. Confirmation bias occurs when an officer believes in or searches for evidence to support a favored theory while ignoring or excusing contrary evidence and is disinclined to change the belief.
This actually had a lot to do with me being arrested for that case in New York, because one of the first, if not the first, after they asked me if Margaret was my name, the second question that they said to me was, "Are you in nursing school?" They believed that there was this big conspiracy where I was in nursing school and had access to these fucking drugs that I was selling people. They were wrong.
It's normal. We all have confirmation bias. But in police work, we can all imagine and agree we need to pay attention to the evidence of how it could have affected the proof beyond reasonable doubt. Whether it makes Meggan look guilty, if you think at the end of the trial, of course, that she did it, you'll have to acquit. It has to be proven.
Oh boy.
Or proof
Okay.
with no real possibility. Otherwise, that's an instruction. So what was the evidence? In the room, the paramedics come. Yes, Meggan and her family are told to get out, and they do. They leave. Although Meggan's mother, who also believed in the DNR that Kaycee said she had, and that Kaycee's desire not to be resuscitated and to go to where she wanted to go, was pretty mad. She was pretty hot. She said, Meggan is her best friend. You're doing the wrong thing by calling the paramedics. And then they're ushered out, told to get out. Mark calls in, the paramedics come. They do what they need to do. So he's tough on a scene. We're going to call it a crime scene. That's the state series that it's a crime scene.
Yeah, there was a DNR.
Because they need to do what they need to do. And sometimes it can affect, obviously, the integrity of the crime scene. They leave. And here's what is ultimately in that room. Syringes. 2 syringes are found. There's some of the plunger type that you could use for the port. 2 syringes at least. Turns out there's 3. I'll get to that in a minute. There are insulin syringes. In other words, the means for Kaycee Terry to utilize them to inject insulin into her body. And like I said, the evidence is that that's not surprising since they're all over the house and available to her at any time. They send these syringes. Let me be clear about the 2 syringes, because I just missed. There's a syringe that is found over by where Kaycee Terry is. I think the evidence exhibit is going to be 2, or not exhibit for you, but police item number. The one found in the room. The evidence is Mark.
Yep.
Ultimately, about 3 or 4 days later, is out cleaning up some things outside in the patio area where Kaycee would go meet friends, smoke cigarettes and such, and had a garbage can for this Fanta box up in the upper left-hand corner. That Fanta box he was going to crush to throw away. That's, by the way, Fanta is what Kaycee drank. Fanta orange. There's Fanta orange cans in the room.
Oh boy.
See the evidence, to see the body camera. And as he manipulated the box before he crushed it, he could tell something was in it. So he pulled it out, and it was a black rag. You can see it in the right part of that picture. And a syringe, a box that no log insulin could be in. And a piece.
Okay, so hold on a second. You're telling me that you believe, I'm talking to this defense attorney, you believe that this individual injected all of this insulin into her port and then wrapped up these syringes, right? Because there's syringes in the house, right? He just said that there was a syringe next to Kaycee. So why were these syringes wrapped up in a black rag, put in a box, and put in the garbage? No. When did she do that? She was in a coma. Anybody else? Does that make sense?
Paper that would come from the box, in other words, evidence. So he called Detective Varney. Detective Varney said, "I'll take some pictures of it. I'll pick it up later." But in that, there's a syringe. So we have 1 syringe from the room at that point. We have another syringe. And then when Detective Varney came over to pick up the Fanta box evidence, Mark told her, "Hey, I had to rip out the carpet and strip down the room." The reason is because the day after this happened, believe it or not, a massive hailstorm occurred and it flooded Kaycee's room. But when Mark says, "Oh, while I was doing that," this is the 19th now, when they've come to pick up the evidence. "When I was doing that, I found another syringe in the room. Here it is." And that's the one on the far right. still in the evidence bag.
Okay.
Those 3 syringes were available, in other words, within days. And the police sent them
Right.
to the crime lab
Exactly.
to get tested for the sort of evidence that Charles was talking about. DNA, fingerprints, and such. Didn't turn out to be good candidates for getting fingerprints. And DNA-wise, they found some DNA. I think you'll hear that with regard to one of the syringes, the DNA wasn't capable of being compared to Meggan, Mark, Kaycee.
Wow.
Those standards were used. Those are the people, the DNA they're trying to find. With the other syringe, it was possible to get enough DNA to find out the following. Mark's DNA was on it. Kaycee's DNA was on it. Meggan is excluded from any DNA on it. By the way, as you're going to hear, they arrested Meggan in March of 25, March 20th. The results that I just described you hadn't even come back yet.
Oh.
There's no DNA from Meggan, no fingerprints from Meggan. And one of the other things you're going to learn is that it turns out that Detective Barney and Special Agent Hales never collected the Fanta box or the rag. I think the evidence will be that there's probably not a better item to get DNA off of than a rag, and not a better item to get fingerprints off of than a smooth surface of a Fanta box. Mark hadn't put those in the bag. Detective Barney said, toss the stuff in the bag and I'll come get it. Although, incredibly, when they went over to pick up the bag, Mark showed him he still had the Fanta box in the rag. They just let him toss it back in the trash.
Oh, wow.
You know, so that's the state of that evidence. We have syringes now with Mark saying he found one when he ripped up the carpet the next day. 2 in the room, 1 in a Fanta box, a vial with some missing that Mark will testify be enough to kill a non-diabetic, in his opinion. Let's talk about the glucometer. Thank goodness.
This does not belong in an opening statement, sir. Why are we going through all the evidence in our opening statement? What the fuck is happening here?
Now, granted, you're going to hear that Meggan didn't tell him what happened to him that day. Didn't tell him about a glucometer, about an insulin overdose, about Kaycee's plan. This glucometer was used. And it was used by Meggan. That'll be the evidence. Because right around 43, which was at 1:43 p.m., a reading of 43, you're close to it, not unconscious. It's not clear. Definitely at 30. That's 2 o'clock p.m. This shows that Kaycee would have been unconscious, and it shows that she would have never regained consciousness. So it gives a timeline. My understanding is, with all these experts and all of this medical testimony, and taking this evidence for what it's worth, there is no medical way to find that after Kaycee's blood sugar was 43, more insulin went into her. So the evidence you're going to hear from any expert that comes to that's it is going to be, I touched my computer. It's going to be that
this guy sucks, y'all. He's giving up all the slides of shit that he needs to prove. Bro, you're terrible.
Whatever time insulin went into Kaycee Terry, she would have been able to do it too.
What's happening?
In fact, the timing of that could have been before Meggan even got there. That's the best of the medicine, and the experts can tell us. So the glucometer, thank goodness, gives us a timeline that demonstrates that exogenous insulin could have been administered by Kaycee Terry to herself. And no evidence shows that anything has been injected after she gave it to herself. I showed you some other syringes. A couple months later, it sounds like Mark actually also found more syringes in his brother Kyle's room, which is right down the hall, the next bedroom from Kaycee's. One of them at least was preloaded. Kyle was a diabetic. He would preload syringes and put them next to in his bedside stand or something. By the way, this room's never certified, please. He was going to move in there. Mark happens to find those empty syringes and one that was preloaded in the room right there next to where Kaycee's room was. And he saves them to his credit. Apparently not really connecting the dots on their evidentiary value right when he found them. He sticks them in the fridge. And as recently as December of last year, 3 months ago, they come to light and the police now have 4 syringes, four more syringes, one loaded, presumably with insulin. He sent those to the lab for fingerprints only, and surprisingly, they don't come back with fingerprints. So the point is that the scene, the evidence, the forensics of this case will show you that they're absolutely consistent with Kaycee Terry doing whatever caused her death to herself, and let alone a real possibility. They're absolutely consistent. But the police don't follow the evidence. The prosecution, who's involved in this case from the start, you'll hear, and whose own investigator is doing the work, despite this evidence, despite not even having medical records, despite the medical examiner's report you're going to hear. The medical examiner is going to say, then and now, this manner of death is undetermined. Their expert medical examiner, based on what I have heard so far, is all I can tell you what I expect, is going to agree. The manner of death is undetermined, and it's not because we don't know that it's insulin. It's because we don't know whether Kaycee did it to herself. But this case is going forward anyway. The police went and arrested Meggan before most of these results were in, before medical records were back. That confirmation bias will drive all the way into this courtroom. I ask you to pay attention to that notion, pay attention to the responsibilities by these principals in relation to that. Everybody, frankly, their evidence is their minds blown about how they got fooled by Kaycee Terry in so many ways.
My bad.
Meggan, after that relationship, learning.
Y'all, I am shocked, okay? Isn't like the opening statement supposed to be like super, just like I feel like it's like a blueprint of like where you expect the trial to go. I'm mind blown that these attorneys are doing all this.
The evidence, regardless of all this cherry pick texting we're hearing about, absolutely will not prove, according to the principles that apply here,
Right.
Meggan some murder,
Exactly.
or even some helper in suicide, other than a comp gun and a best friend who watched her friend die, but got charged with murder. For that reason, we'll be returning the verdict not guilty. Thank you.
Okay, y'all.
Counsel, thank you.
What in the fuck? Like, it says, I'm going to stop there because if I don't start feeding my cats, they're going to think that like I'm trying to starve them. And, you know, we don't want them to think that. But what in the fuck? Has anybody in here ever seen such long opening statements? Right. That's what I'm saying, Mahalo. Isn't that, maybe I'm wrong, but I've always, like, it's like no, I'm kidding. They're just like, this is their dinner time. But like, normally it's like a little synopsis, right? Right. Normally it's like a little synopsis. And then you introduce these things when you have a witness on the stands. What in the fuck? Right, Lily. What is happening here? I'm like, what? Listen, I'm going to tell you right now. So let's see. 2 hours and 21 minutes for opening statements? I'm like mind blown about it. And I'm surprised because the judge, I sped it up. The judge let that shit go. And like normally the judge would be like, all right, move it along. That is crazy. Crazy. Right. Facts. I'd be like, are we done? Fuck that. And now, so this is day 1. I think they're on day 3 now. Hold on. I'll go and see. But like, what is fucking happening? March 12th is day 3. That is madness, y'all.
90 to 120 on the top number.
They're on day 3 now. I can't even imagine. I'm going to go back. I mean, I was interested in this one, but I'm stuck on the Corey one. So I'm just going to go back. I probably don't have the time to watch 2 trials at a time. Average opening statement. $10 to 45 minutes. While complex cases may require more time, most attorneys agree that 10 to 30 minutes is ideal to keep the jury engaged. That's crazy. This is Meggan Meggan Sundwall. The nurse that is on trial right now for attempting to Sundwall. The judge is she's on trial. One of her friends unalived herself using insulin, and she encouraged it. Right? This one, I'm telling you, I cannot fucking imagine. I would be like, are we good? And like, it doesn't look very good from where I'm sitting. If you're a fucking RN and you did nothing. Crazy shit, y'all. But I'm going to go back to catching up on Corey Richens, because I am, I guess if they're paid hourly, that might be good. Zoe. They're like, oh, you're good. Listen, these opening statements might be the longest opening statements ever, because Lord, it was crazy. One of her friend patients, yeah, crazy shit. This is, hopefully they're not sequestered, because I'd be like, we're gonna be here for years, aren't we? I have to do some editing on the live from earlier. Villain is laying on the thing of the cat tree with her head going into one of the cubbies. Villain, you want to eat? Billy, you want to eat? Yeah, I bet that. You want to eat? Right. This is crazy. Yeah, it's dinner time for them. Billy, you want to eat? She give me like side eye. Are you gonna do it now? Yeah, fuck that, dude. This is crazy. I can't believe it's so bad. I hope everybody has a good night. Don't be a piece of shit today. Mindy, get a fucking life, bitch. What are you gonna do when I get a judgment against you? Do you work? Do you have a job? Fucking wild. I hope everybody has a good night, and stay safe if you are in the pathway of that storm or any storms in general. And yeah, that's what she's like. Is it time? They have dry food and water all day, but I give them wet food in the morning and at night. All right, y'all. Have a good day or night, whichever you choose, wherever you are. All right, Finny. Oh, I eat too? Finny?